Good afternoon, Om Shanti, and welcome to everyone to this afternoon's workshop. And we're so happy to have Sona from Abu Dhabi. The title of our workshop today is Staying Content in a Discontent World. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce Sona to you. Sona is the director of the Center Inner Space Meditation Center in Abu Dhabi, and she's been there since 2008. But a real globe trotter, as I can gaze from wherever she goes. And before we started, I asked her where she was in India, and she said yes, 2 days ago she returned from our headquarters in Mount Abu. So Sona has really traveled widely at all our centers, and really introducing meditation to corporates, to people on a personal level. Sister Sona has traveled in the UK, Italy, Spain, Malaysia, Singapore, Australia, New Zealand, Fiji, and I think India has been many trips, and also in the UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Turkey. So, and also South Africa. Wonderful that she's been there with us as well. So Stasona has been teaching meditation in the corporate environment and as well in the personal environment, being in Abu Dhabi. And she, from my experience, being in contact with Sister Sona, I think that intellect of hers is absolutely refined and powerful, because when she speaks on meditation or about self-development and self-empowerment, I can just see, you know, she really captures her audience and articulates so beautiful as she goes through her session. So I really feel that you absorb so much when listening to her, because there's energy that's coming through that's allowing you to really connect and feel so you know, part of what she's saying. And you know, I'm just going through a few things that Sister Sona has delivered many workshops and seminars, and they range from many different topics, from mindfulness to meditation to stress management, interpersonal relationships and communication. And has also interpreted different translation, and I know the translation that she does from Hindi to English. So yes, achievements that some of the countries that Sona has worked with and currently is working with in Abu Dhabi, you know, like Emirates, nuclear energy, Etihad Airways, UAE Embassy, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, London Imperial College for Diabetics. So there's so many various different areas that Sister Sona has worked in. So the one thing that I would like to share as well is that she was running the retreat center, the coordinator for the retreat center for spiritual learning in the Blue Mountains in Sydney, Australia from 2001 to 2006. And her responsibility was planning, managing the weekend retreats. There would be up to 120 guests. So management of the entire property and liaison with the local community and various levels. So I can really, you know, understand where Sister Sona comes from and the experience she has gained from all of this work that she has done, and especially running the retreat center. So a warm welcome to Sister Sona. I look forward to your workshop today. It's really wonderful to have you.
Thank you, Sister Aruna. It's really good to be in South Africa. It's amazing, isn't it, how we can trot the globe?
Amazing, very true.
Yeah. So you don't have to get on a plane these days. You just got to get onto Zoom and here you are. There you are. So thank you for a beautiful introduction. I think it's, you know, very kind of you to elaborate so much. At the end of the day, we just are who we are. And, you know, life gives us opportunities to learn. I think that's the main thing, isn't it? Whatever we do, it's a learning process. So today's topic is quite a unique one. It's quite a relevant one, isn't it? Staying content in a discontent world. And when you look around the world, really, there's not a lot of people, I don't meet anyway, maybe you do in South Africa, I'm not sure, but it's not a lot of people who would say, I'm totally okay with what's happening around me, with the people around me, with everything on the outside and the inside of me. You know, there's not many people who could say right here, right now, that all is good. I met a friend of mine actually a few weeks ago, and she said to me, actually, she said, I have absolutely no wants. And she really got me thinking. She says, I just want nothing more than what I have. I'm just so, so content. And it really started me on this little inner journey, asking myself, have I really reached that place where there is absolutely nothing that I want? Absolutely nothing. Because the world we live in is a world where, unfortunately, the more you get, the more you have, the more likes you get on Facebook, more people in your life, the more money in the bank, the more you are defined to be a successful person. And in some ways, this misidentification is what I believe has created so much discontent. The more I feel that gathering stuff, people, objects, ideas, opinions in my head, the more of what I think is going to give me happiness, the more I have of that, the more content I'll be. So is that really true, though? Is that really true? Because many of the people on the call, I'm sure we've lived a very comfortable life. We've had plenty. But has our heart and our head reached a place of contentment? So what are the signs of discontentment, and how can we really know that the world is going through such a pandemic of discontentment, really? I live in a country where in the UAE, in Abu Dhabi, where really we have everything. People here are extremely wealthy and they have so much in their life. And I must admit, they live a very opulent life as compared to other people. Sometimes I call it Planet Abu Dhabi, because I come here from other parts of the world and it feels like you entered another space, another world, really. And yet I find that the same signs of discontentment can be found here as the rest of the world. So what are they? The feeling of expectation. I want people to be a certain way. In fact, I want people to be my way. I want them to be the way I need them to be. I want them to be. Sometimes, somebody might do something that you find a bit strange. And, when we say, well, they shouldn't have done that, or they should have known better, be saying, you're not okay the way you are. And I really believe that you should be different to what you are. Expectation. So, just a quick check in your own life and the people in your life. Since this is a workshop, it's not just a straight talk, but think of the people closest to you, the people you interact with the most. And then the next layer, the ones you interact with once a week, once in a while. That sense of how much expectation do I have of them, from them? How much do I want them not to be the way they are, to be the way I want them to be, I expect them to be? The next thing is things or stuff. How much stuff do I need in my life? How many desires do I have for more and more things? Again, when you walk into that shop or the mall, ask yourself, what is the list of things that I really, really need? And then draw a line, and below the line, write the things which are your greed. Because if I don't understand my needs versus my greed, I'm in a very, very tricky place where it's very easy to deceive myself. So these days, before actually buying things in my life, I tend to ask myself, stop and ask myself, do you really, really need that? And about a month and a half ago, I was giving this talk somewhere else. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to be honest and I'm going to check my cupboard, because my big weakness is probably a few extra clothes. So I checked my cupboard and I counted how many shirts I have. I counted how many pairs of trousers I have and all my clothes. And I actually culled them down. I was traveling to India soon after. So I thought, you know what, everything that's extra is going to be given away. Otherwise, what's the point of me giving this talk? So I counted how many I needed and I kept 1 or 2 extra of everything, thinking, well, it'll last me a bit extra, a bit longer. But I gave away the rest. A lot of it was, stuff that I just kept for emotional reasons, I wore this for this and I've had this long and all that business. Counted my clothes, I counted my shoes, I counted everything that, the linen that I have in my cupboard. And I thought to myself, how much am I content with just having enough? So again, how much stuff have you accumulated? I'm kind of lucky in a way that I move house a lot, move country a lot. So life has taught me how to travel relatively lighter through life, I don't have the opportunity to put things away in a cupboard and let them sit there for 10 years. Usually I move every few years. So that is a really good clean out time. But for those of you who've been living in, the same house for the last 2 decades or longer, check, how much have you got? How much do you need? What is your greed? And the third thing is, the third sign of expectation is, how much do I need life to go in a particular way for me to be content? So it's people, things, and this drama of life. And I'll tell you a little story because I'm about to go to Australia in about a week's time. And I've been planning this trip for 2 or 3 months now. And so I notified all the people where I'm going, especially when I just land, actually, because, that's the main sort of, the main thing I wanted to get organized. And I spoke to the center that I'd be going to. And I said, look, I land on this day and I'll take that day to rest and catch up with some people who are coming for lunch. And then the next day I've got work to do outside. You've got to go to the bank, got to go here, got to go there. And then on the third day, early morning, I travel up from Melbourne to Sydney. So I barely have 48 hours in Melbourne and then I have to leave. So I kind of planned every moment, because I've got to fit everything in. And I'm going back, of course, after quite a while, after 3 years. So, this has been going on for weeks and months, actually. And suddenly yesterday, I got this email saying, oh, I'm so sorry, we forgot to tell you that when you arrive, even though it's not a government rule, because we have so many elderly people living in the center, you'll need to quarantine for 3 days to isolate yourself. I was like, oh dear, I'm not even there for 3 days. I'm not even there for 48 hours. And I thought, now what? And I must admit, less than a minute, but, a fair few seconds, ridiculous. I've done all my planning, all my communication, everything I needed to do. And, you're telling me now, like it's a week before I arrive, and I've got so much lined up. And, I've connected with people who are coming to meet me for lunch, for dinner, for this, for that. And I could just feel somewhere deep down in my head and in my heart that there was a bit of restlessness. There was a bit of disturbance. As I said, it didn't take long to bounce back because I really caught it. I nipped that in the bud and I thought, hang on, what's going on? And I realized that for me, it's not so much people, it's not so much things, but it's when I've planned in a particular way and life doesn't go according to my plan, that there's this tiny sense of discontent. Like I expected things to go a particular way and they didn't. But that's just a very obvious example, something that's currently happening in my life. And it's amazing how things change, So it took me, as I said, less than a minute. And then I sort of reset myself and thought, okay, no problem. I'll go stay somewhere else. We have so many centers in Melbourne, it's not elderly people in every center. And the incredible thing that happened was when I came to a place of acceptance, of being totally content with the way life was panning out, life changed. The people of that center had an emergency meeting, crisis meeting, and they've changed their policy. The policy they had for the last 2.5 years has now changed. The international arrivals don't need to isolate for 3 days as long as they've had a PCR test before they leave, which is no problem. So I sort of asked myself, do I actually lead life, or does life show me, where are my weaknesses? And as I jump over those weaknesses and as I move forward, I actually tell life what I need and what I want, but not through wanting it, but by saying, I'm okay with whatever. And the minute you put your hands up and say, I'm okay with whatever happens, whoever comes into my life, whatever I have, somehow you open the gates for everything you need to come to you. So really, really interesting. Can I be totally aligned with my own state of contentment, no matter what happens, no matter how people behave, no matter who I'm with, no matter what I've got and what flows away from my life? It seems like in today's world, no matter how much people have, they're not content. And I've kind of coined a new term, contentment postponed. It sometimes feels like people don't stay content. They don't remain content until something or someone is the way they want them to be. So you know how we say, if this happens, then I'll be content. When that happens, I'll be content. When someone behaves this way, I'll be content. So it's really interesting how we kind of postpone our contentment. We postpone our happiness. So what is contentment really? The contentment is more than just an inner state. Sometimes we say, it's a state of being. But I'd like to say, I really believe contentment is more than just that inner state of being. I think contentment is actually a deep programming inside me that says I'm okay with all that is in my life today. And there's a sense of inner fulfillment, a sense that I have everything I need. I am everything I need to be. And life is providing to me everything I need, not what I want. So there's a very deep faith in that state of contentment, behind that contentment. Just going back to the world and the discontent in the world, even the richest of people I know in Abu Dhabi and around the world just never seem to have enough. Life never seems to be okay, no matter what happens. In fact, the other day I went to a mall and I was shocked to read this sort of slogan in one of the shops, which said, they're obviously trying to lure people to come in, and they were saying, feed your greed. And I thought to myself, wow, people now are almost asking others to feed their vices, feed your greed. And I remember greed being a word that is not good. And yet in today's world, feed your desires, let us feed your desires, let us feed your greed, and then you'll feel okay. So this is the state of the world. In fact, marketing companies, if you think about it, what are they doing? They're very clever. They understand that the 3 basic energies that make up who we are as a soul, which we talk about them on a spiritual level, but marketing companies seem to have tapped into what they are: love, peace, and happiness. And everything they do is to lure the human soul, the spirit, by saying, if you come to me, if you buy what I tell you to do, if you do what I tell you to, to plan for your holiday or whatever, then you will be happy. You will find love in your life. There will be peace. They are just incredibly clever. This has been my realization. And because they're doing such a good job, consumerism in the world is going up. And people are starting to believe that if I eat that ice cream or that product, if I go to a particular place, if I buy this particular object, my life will be healthier, happier, more on track. Everything is so outside in, totally outside in. Whereas spiritually, when we understand contentment, what is contentment? Contentment is being okay with the now. It is a deep programming inside me, whether you call it a program, a habit, a sanskara. It's an inner wiring that says, whatever is happening now is amazing. And why do I say that? Because, when you're content with the now, this moment, and you maintain that into the next moment, and into the next moment, and into the next moment, what ends up happening is you've actually created and you have encouraged this wiring, this programming, this habit of being okay. There is no other way of building or creating contentment in your life. The minute you postpone that contentment to even the next minute, the next hour, the next day, you're actually encouraging your desires, your expectations, your wants. So if you say, I'll be content if this happens, when this happens, if this person behaves a particular way, if this is removed from my life, when I can get out of the current situation, all you're doing is actually encouraging discontent within yourself. And I guess I have to now touch on one of the big areas of contentment. In fact, it's the bedrock of contentment, and that is the contentment with myself. Can I be completely content with myself right here, right now? Despite who I am, my weaknesses, shortcomings, despite what you might define as a failure, or word, but some people do, all the things that didn't quite go the way you expected. Can you still be completely content with yourself? Because I honestly believe that one who can be content with who they are every step of the way has mastered the art of being content. And the reason I say that is because I think some of us have this habit of trying to be perfect right here, right now, and forgetting that life is a journey. Not just for me, but for everyone. And in doing that, what happens is that I put a lot of pressure on myself to be a particular way, to be, the perfect mother, father, friend, sister, brother, employee, whatever it might be. And as long as I keep pushing myself to being that perfect me, it's almost like I live in a state of discontentment internally. Therefore, I start to project that discontentment into the world. And unless the rest of the world, the external parts of my life, people, situations, the weather, whatever it might be, until that matches my inner deep desire and thirst for contentment, I will never rest. So because I can't meet my own perfection, my need for perfection, right here, right now, so I actually completely push that out onto the world. And it's really interesting how life kind of responds to me the way I reach out to life. If I can't be content with what is happening in my life, the people in my life, life keeps throwing more of the same at me, saying, well, learn your lesson. And the minute I put my hands up and go, okay, whatever is good, life cooperates and says, well, you've learned that lesson, so you can have it. And the funny thing is then it doesn't matter because you've risen above it. It's almost like contentment is, even though I said it's the foundation and the bedrock of a spiritual life, it is also the highest vibration at which the soul can vibrate at, can be at energetically. Because contentment is a state of complete fullness. And when I'm full, I'm in a place of completely giving. No matter what, no matter who, no matter how life behaves, I keep giving. Which is very close to being a perfect human being, as close as a human could get to the divine. But the minute I drop down from that energetic level, I come into a place where I start to require. I start to depend on life to give me, for me to feel okay. And of course, most people in today's world tend to be at quite a low level, which means that unless at every moment they are getting something from someone or from something or from life in general, from the situation around them, unless they are being propped up, to hold that state of dependency, they're not okay. So I'd like you to do a little check now, just an internal check. Can you identify an area of discontentment in your life? An area where you have some expectation of how you want people to be. Someone's not the way you want them to be. I'd like them to be better. Can you perhaps identify some things you need in your life before you could feel content? Or perhaps some achievements you need to get to, some goals you need to achieve before you can feel content. It's almost like you're incomplete until you can achieve that. Can you think of situations that you need to sort out before you can feel complete? Find an area of discontentment in your life right now. And I hope there's no one on the call who says, well, I'm perfectly okay with everything, always. Because if you are in that space, then you should really be giving this talk. I can't say that I'm anywhere near a state of complete contentment, but I must admit I've got quite good at identifying when I am discontent and when those signs of discontentment, the expectations, the desires, the wants start to come up. So if you can identify your own personal area, and then ask yourself if that remains the way it is forever, person stays like that, the situation stays like that, the achievement that you want to get to, it doesn't happen. Just imagine, can you in this moment say, I'm okay with it? I'm okay with exactly the way things, people, situations are in my life. Deeply breathe in that, okay, I'm totally okay because I don't need anything to happen for me to feel okay. And the day we can keep breathing in that I'm okay, right here, right now, from second to second, from minute to minute, from day to day, you're starting to plant and sustain the seed of contentment within the soul, within the self. This is why I say that contentment is actually a very deep-rooted habit. Contentment is not going to come to you magically. It really needs to be practiced. It's a little bit like, how yesterday, when I got the news, oh, you can't go to the place you want, according to the plan that you have, that you expected to happen, that was a very small thing because it could be rectified very easily. I mean, there's so many other places I could stay in, but the minute I felt the inner disruption, the inner agitation, as I said, it wasn't longer than a minute, but it was there. I asked myself, well, what was it that made you discontent? What created that upheaval? That little ripple inside. And I realized that the identity I have is very much of being a planner, and people don't, it's a strange thing, actually, people don't disappoint me and create discontentment in me. I think I've dealt with so many people being different to the way I'd like them to be. I've kind of got over that. I mean, touch wood, I don't want to have some difficult person come into my life and, test me out again, but I can handle people and go, oh, well, that's how they are. But when I make plans, it's almost like there's a little bit of identification with being a good planner, and therefore the attachment to the plan. And this is a very interesting point, that behind discontentment, there always lies some misidentification of myself. There is a part of my ego, ego defined as, wrong identification, the wrong me, the me that is still body conscious, that's related to the external, my roles, my labels, my physical self, my story, all of that. So I really, really feel that that misidentification and continuing to hold on to that label, self, the ego, is what ultimately starts to create a need for life to fulfill that falsehood. So, Sona the planner needed the plan to go according to what she had put into place for her to feel okay. But then immediately when I realized, hang on, that was just a plan. Yeah, and plans change. There's plan A, there's plan B, and you always need to have a plan C these days. Then I started to ask myself, well, what if you don't go to Australia at all? Your ticket is booked for 8 days from now. What if it doesn't happen? Then what? So that was really interesting too. And I thought, hey, yes, what if all the plans I have for the next 6 months don't happen? I'm running a retreat there. What if the guests get there and I don't? Am I content? What happens if, I have a few other projects that I'm going to work on? What if they don't happen? What if I get stuck there and I can't come back? So it's really, really important to do these little exercises every now and then and ask yourself, in this moment, right here, right now, with the circumstances in my life being exactly as they are, am I content? And I heard a definition of contentment actually very recently, which was contentment is rest in the head and the heart. And how contentment in the head is about me telling myself that everything is okay, but it can actually be quite deceptive. You know, we can force ourselves to say everything is okay. We can pretend everything is okay. You know, it's easy to ignore the feelings in the heart, the programming that's stored deep inside. But if you check your heart and you check your feelings, they never lie. So when something happens and a little bit of a feeling, you know, when I say a feeling, I mean this little ripple, you know, this little up and down of emotion happens. It may not be a huge roller coaster. That's, you know, a state of complete discontentment and being very upset, but just a little ripple of, oops, that's a bit hard to swallow. You know, why? Or didn't expect that to happen. Even that tiny little bit of discontent can often mean that the heart is not at rest and that the heart needs a little bit of work, that there's still a little bit of flushing out to do of old habits, old memories, old dependencies, before I can come to a place of complete contentment. Okay, well, I've actually spoken now for about 45 minutes, and I'm wondering if anyone would like to ask a question. Because often I find that questions are probably more relevant to you in your life than me just speaking. So would anyone like to ask a question, whether it's through the chat box, or it's really nice if you can unmute and speak? Is there anything there that you liked or you disagreed with, or you need clarified? The audience in South Africa very, very quiet. I've never had a group that is so peaceful and content before, and who doesn't have questions to ask.
Hi, Sana.
Question, sorry.
Just a question, and I think for me, people is the bigger issue than things not working out. My question is, so, you know, someone perhaps does something, a repetitive behavior that might be affecting others as well. So how do you manage that in a way? Because one is, yes, I can be content, but their behavior is creating discontentment in others, and maybe they're not at a place where they can be content. What's your method? Because you shared that you've met so many people with different sanskaras, so to speak, and challenges, and you're at a place where, okay, you can let that go. But I'm wondering about this. How do you manage something like that? Thanks.
Such a brilliant question, isn't it? When you're discontent watching an external situation. You know, Nita, I did ask some of my own mentors. I have a lovely mentor in Australia, actually, Brother Charlie. And I asked him once, you know, what do you do when something happening out there between two other people is creating, you know, ripples of discontentment or some form of discomfort within you? And what I did realize after a lovely chat was that it's both of those people who are creating the situation. Often, you know, somebody might be not behaving in the way which would be, you know, soul conscious or very virtuous. But it's the other person not responding in the right way as well. that is sustaining it. And so I guess, you know, I realized that the issue is both-sided. And so when I watch the situation, I think many of us are wired to always take the side of the underdog. You know, oh, poor person, poor victim. But to get into a place of being a victim, often, you know, we've created that ourselves. And so maybe part of the solution is firstly to sort out your own discontentment and come to a place of total acceptance, that this is a give and take between these two souls that has to happen. For one side to realize that what they're doing is, you know, not the best, and for the other side to gain the strength to be able to get out of that situation. And possibly just when you come to a place of peace and rest, you can strengthen the person who feels like they might be the victim. And until that person doesn't strengthen themselves, even if the person who is perpetuating, you know, the whole circumstance, the mess in the relationship, you know, it's a perception, isn't it, that that person is perpetuating it because they look like they're the bully, they're the aggressor. But, you know, even if that person is removed, the person who appears to be the victim will probably fall into the same situation again because they haven't learned how to create inner strength.
Great, thanks so much. You know, I love that idea. And so almost like detach in a way, but be present with your own peace to support the process. Great, thanks so much.
Thank you, Nita. That was a great question because I think relationships are, you know, one of the hardest things to manage. Yeah. Anyone else have a question or a comment even, or anything really?
Yes. I don't know if you can hear me, Sister Sona. Okay. Yes. I was also relating to people and, you know, I find the biggest thing is expectations, that when I have an expectation of someone to do it the right way, and again was just looking at it from a point of view, is that is it because I want things my way and I'm controlling, hence that expectation, that level of expectation is coming through. So yeah, I just I thought maybe if you could just delve a little deeper into this aspect of expectations that we from others, you know, from people especially.
Well, in one word, yes. Yeah. Whenever we want something of someone, then yes, there is some control, there is some need for the person to be a particular way, for me to be at peace. But if you look at it a little bit deeper, obviously the way that we create change, transformation, people, something good. And we expect usually of people who we believe have the capacity of greater good. You know, if somebody is not spiritually minded, often you don't expect much of them. You kind of go, oh, well, that's just the way they are. It's easier to accept them. It's easier to embrace just the way they are and not want them to be different. But it's people who are perhaps, you know, a little bit what we see as being senior to us, people who we've put on a pedestal, who then become the givers, you know, the ones from whom we take. And why I say that is because if they behave in a particular way that is what I expect, I feel okay. But when they don't, then my expectation is not met. And I have really realized that even the slightest feeling of taking from any human being means I've put them on a pedestal. I've put them in a place where I'm expecting energy to flow from them into me. You know, gravity feed. Anything at a higher level will feed into something lower. Well, that's what expectation from another human being is. And when that doesn't happen, then obviously that support system that I've created, that dependency is not being met. The only way to get rid of it is to re-identify myself and put myself on par with every other human soul, every other human soul. And perhaps only to leave one soul up there, a bit higher than me, which is more than a gravity feed, but it's like, a shower. And that is the divine, the supreme, or God. But every other human soul, let them be on par with me, so that there is no more expectation of them being a particular way. And there is no more, why did you or why didn't you? Yeah. And so I reach a place where I appreciate how they are, what they are, but I don't get ruffled when they are different to the way I would have thought they were. So you have faith in people, but only 90%, and allow them that 10% margin to act in a human way. Now, if I were to internalize that even more, may I suggest that it could come, and I'm not saying it does, but it could come from an expectation of myself being always okay, always perfect. And even that slightest bit of pressure that I'm putting on myself, if it's not met, will then project itself onto other human beings. In fact, just this morning, I was talking to a group of friends in a spiritual class, and I said to them, take off that expectation and the pressure on yourself of being perfect right here, right now. Because if you don't meet it, you will project it out onto others. So accept that you're doing your best and that you're in a very good place, that it's part of a journey. The journey is not over. So there are more things to learn. There are more mistakes to be made. Just accept it. And then move ahead with the best intention, put your best foot forward. And every time you do slip up, or you trip up, or you make a little mistake, just understand it's just another lesson learned. It's another stepping stone. It's not a stumbling block. And the more I can heal that relationship with myself and come to a place of complete acceptance in the way I am, the more I think I'd probably be able to accept others being the way they are. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. I think that last point of taking off the expectation of the self that we're not performing and that then we are projecting it onto others. Thank you.
Thank you, Aruna. A question or even make a comment on anything. Otherwise, we could do a little bit of meditation and maybe I can just end the session after the meditation with a few final words. But yes, Linda, I'd love to hear from you.
Hi, Sona.
Hello.
Thank you very much for a very interesting and very informative talk. I'm a relatively new Brahmin. I'm just 2 years old. So this has been a very interesting, is still a very interesting journey for me. And I identify very much with what Aruna has said, and thank you for that wonderful answer about the people aspect. But I find that I also battle with situations. And I think it's also linked to people, because situations and people are almost, inseparable. And it really takes quite a lot of thought, because, we are at the end of the Iron Age, and so things around us are busy collapsing. And in my professional life, I've always been the fixer. And so I'm constantly frustrated with the general state of the world and incompetence and people not doing things the way. And I find myself very frustrated and getting angry about situations that are actually completely out of my control. So it's a very interesting thing to look at and to realize that I'm discontent. I'm hugely discontent about situations and, the way they are. So I definitely had to say no to situations, if I'm being absolutely honest, but a wonderful opportunity to really look at that stuff and say, well, am I good? Because every time, this week I didn't have fiber for 2 days, so that I just about went crazy. But this is a situation that could last for a very long time. Or anything, water, we don't have water, we don't have electricity. And some things seem to be okay, but I, like you, am a planner. So when things don't go well, I get very upset. So thank you. Just thought I'd share that with you. Thank you, Sona.
Oh, it's lovely sharing, Linda, really, because all this honest sharing is beautiful, because as I said, we're here as students, there's so many lessons to learn. And whether you're new on this path or older on this path, there's still lessons to learn. And, in some ways it's interesting. You say it's such a sad world, it's such a degraded world. It's a world with no energy left in it. And it's really interesting how we're brought up to, when we see elderly people, with a walking stick, we're brought up to care for them and lend a hand and support them. But when we see people spiritually with a walking stick, which is 99% of the world, with absolutely no energy left, the soul is crippled. The soul is so old. The soul has no more energy. The soul is in a place where, they're limping. They can't move ahead at all. And yet there's still so much frustration that the flat battery is not working. The flat batteries around us are just not working. And a flat battery is not meant to work. And so if I'm really honest, and I dig deep, the only thing left really for us to become angels is to become compassionate, totally compassionate. Compassionate with every human being around us, even the most violent human beings. I tend to be an animal lover, a nature lover. And of course I hate, it's for me, it's such a deep people behaving cruelly with animals. I think many of you on the call would feel the same way. And yet to have compassion because, and I'm not a Christian, but I really like the forgive them for they know not what they do. And that a soul whose intellect is not functioning, well, how else do you expect them to behave? And rather than that making me feel discontent and frustrated and angry, I've tried to really use that as fuel to fire up my own inner change and my process of transformation even more by being more and more disinterested in this old world. My interests are not really in food. I'm not a foodie, I'm not so interested in things. My last interest was probably, looking like I'm wearing decent clothes. I have a little bit of an issue with people who wear, crumpled clothes all the time or unironed clothes, but I'm getting over that too. And I ask myself, well, why should they iron their clothes when all they're doing is swanning around the house, not meeting people, And there are plenty of people who don't need to be PR sort of, they're not people who are out there facing the public. So why not wear clothes that are not perfectly ironed, So I'm getting over that as well. But it's really amazing the programming, the sanskars we have inside that are constantly, being projected onto the world and onto people more than anyone else. And I mean, we talk about others in the world, but non-BKs, but even if you look at those on a spiritual path, it can be so easy to look at them too and say, you shouldn't be like that. You could be doing better. But it is what it is. I remember a couple of years ago, I went through quite a unique situation where I saw a very senior person in my proximity behaving in quite a silly way. And I was a bit confused, and it did last for a few hours, I must admit. And I contacted again, somebody a bit, in the know. And I said, what's going on? Why is this person lashing out at me and just behaving in a way that I can't quite understand? The person just said one thing to me, she is how she is. That's just how it is. Embrace it, accept it. There's nothing left to understand. Bring your head to a place of complete rest. And let your heart rest too. Let there be absolutely no ripple of emotion. And it was really good. Because as I said, it was somebody who I did put on a little bit of a pedestal, because I really appreciate the person's qualities, as we all do of each other. And it taught me the lesson, let me appreciate people. Let me really, take from their example and, imbibe their qualities, but let me not put anyone on a pedestal and be in a place where I'm being gravity fed. Let me take away all that dependency. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Linda. Welcome.
Thank you, Sona.
Okay, anyone else? It's probably time for another question. And it's nice because these are the conversations I think that really help deep checking, isn't it? And if we don't check, and if we don't sort of sort things out internally, then nothing can really be sorted out on the outside. Nothing can change. And if I don't change, the world is resting on my shoulders, really, on our shoulders. Not that we need to put pressure on ourselves, but, bit by bit, little by little. Okay, so if there's nobody else who has a comment or a question, maybe we can just do a little bit of meditation. So, put down your phones and pens, papers, if you've got notebooks in your hand, whatever. And just allow yourself to be right here, right now. You settle into stillness as you bring your thoughts, your feelings back to your own spiritual identity. I, the self, the soul. Just ask yourself, how full is your heart? How full is your heart of love for yourself? Exactly the way you are. Not you, the effort maker. Not you, the spiritual student. Not you, the one who has traveled so far, who you pat on the back. But just you, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Can you embrace yourself right now and accept everything that you are? You're okay. In fact, you're more than okay. You're a child of God, being guided by His divine light. Filled with His strengths and powers. Supported by His energy. What more do you want? The world can offer you nothing in comparison to that. So just check. Has that divine love and light filled your heart completely to the point where there is nothing left, no space that remains, so that there is no need, no desire, no expectation to take anything from this old world. And if you feel that there's some space inside your heart, fill it right now. Is there still a need for love and acceptance, recognition, appreciation? Just feel the love of the divine and His appreciation for who you are. Is there a need for peace, for things to be the way you need them to be, for people to be the way you need them to be? For less chaos and confusion and commotion around you? If so, fill yourself with God's peace, a peace that remains so still, so restful, despite the madness of the world. Is there a need of happiness in your life? Is there still space in your heart that requires things, food, achievements to make you happy? Fill that space with the joy of knowing that in God's eyes, you make Him the happiest of all. And that in return rebounds and fills my heart with so much joy. So just come back to your surroundings. With a full heart, content heart. Know that all is good right here, right now. And carry that feeling of goodness, of fulfillment, of contentment from this moment into the next. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and thank you so much for that beautiful meditation. Just took me into a state of real silence and looking at the self, truly. A big thank you, Sister Sona, for this afternoon's workshop. And I think for me, really just looking at this aspect of expectations and, just working with this aspect of where am I at really. And so many valuable lessons have come out from this afternoon. I really would like to thank you for your time to be with us this afternoon. And thank you to those that joined us and took their time to be with us. So I wish you well for your trip in Australia. Travel well and be safe. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good afternoon. So lovely comments coming in the chat. Many thanks, Sona. Wonderful, practical spirituality, beautiful session. Thank you so much. So really, everybody's saying thank you and safe travels. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, and thank you for inviting me to South Africa. It was great to be with you all.
We have to have you in person.
Yes, well, happy to come. Let the world open up a bit more, and it'll be wonderful to meet face to face. So
that's it. Take good care. Om Shanti.
Okay, thank you. Om Shanti.
Thank you.